Good morning, Pastor Justin here, and I'm excited to bring to you today a devotional on your fourth day of prayer and fasting. In this process of these 21 days of prayer and fasting, I believe that you will grow in your spirituality. I believe you not only grow in your spirituality, but hopefully you'll even grow emotionally, physically. I hope that you feel better. I hope that as you remove certain things out of your life, you start to realize that some of those things you can do without. Some of those things may have even become idols in your life. And maybe some of those things needed to take a second or third place to other things in your life. And whatever the case is, no matter what, I want you to know that you just trying this is huge. You need to know that you just setting aside to this part of the year, the very first part of the year, to commit to fasting and prayer for 21 days is a huge, huge step in your walk with God. And I want to just encourage you today to let you know that fasting is not only something that we talk about, but here, the pastors of the church, we believe in fasting. I want you to know specifically, me personally, I have received some many major breakthroughs in my life that occurred just through fasting. And today, I just want to share, I think it would be appropriate to start off my portion of this by sharing with you one huge testimony that happened to me all in a time of fasting. So you have to understand that I have been here at Crystal River Church of God for almost 13 years now. And if you know me, many of you who do know know that I was raised in church my entire life. That's not to say that I was always a saint of God. Even prior to 18, I was not necessarily a good Christian, as you would say. I was a pastor's son, as well as I had grown up in church when my grandfather was a pastor, my father was a pastor, so on, and I was just a troublemaker. However, God got a hold of me when I was about 21 years old and changed my life. Well, during that time, I started to develop a core habit of prayer and fasting. Well, God started messing with me in my ministry. He started opening doors for me in ministry that were unexplainable to me because they didn't quite line up with everything that I had been taught, everything that I had been raised in, and what was certainly normal for me. So I had kind of this crossroad of, God, it feels like you're doing this. It feels like you're opening these doors, but yet it goes against what others are telling me. So God, what is going on? Am I wrong? Am I right? I want to make sure I'm doing this the right way. So what happened is that I went to my go-to, and that was prayer and fasting. And I set aside 7 days of prayer, fasting, and isolation. I had told nobody about this, not a soul. And all I did was I told my boss that I needed to take off 7 days of work, use vacation time, and that was it. No one else knew what was going on. I took aside those 7 days of prayer and fasting, and within those 7 days, I had made up my mind that I was going to commit it to finding and hearing God's direction. Next thing I did is that Sunday before I was to start, I went to Crystal River Church of God for the very first time ever. I had never met anyone at Crystal River other than my now wife, Danielle, but I had never met any of the pastors, never met any of the preachers, worship team, anything like that. So I show up on Sunday, and out of my comfort zone in a place that was unfamiliar to me, knowing that I have set aside 7 days of prayer and fasting beginning the following Monday, that God was going to have to lead me. So I'm there in the middle of service, and all of a sudden it was one of those typical rockin', Holy Spirit-filled Sunday morning services. And what happens? Pastor Ronnie, whom I had never met before, steps down off the platform and points at me, and he says, "Hey, you, can I pray for you?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess you can." And I stepped down outside of my seat and went over there to Pastor, and he prayed for me. In that moment, God spoke a prophetic word to him. He said, God is telling me that if you'll set aside a time of prayer, fasting, and isolation, mind you, he didn't know anything about that, that God will speak to you in 3 days and give you an answer with direction. I just was totally humbled, not only humbled, but fell to my knees with amazement that God would speak to me in this time. Then the next day, I began my time of prayer, fasting, and isolation. In 3 days from that point, I received 2 confirmations from 2 friends of mine that said exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. That God was directing me and He was leading me. And I want you to know that that is not only the moment that brought me here to Crystal River Church of God. That moment right there is what made me a member of Crystal River Church of God, or at least led me to membership at Crystal River Church of God. But it is also the most integral part of my ministry is when God spoke to me in that time of prayer and fasting. So I don't know what you might be fasting for today, but whatever it is, I want you to know that God is there with you. And then if you commit this time to Him, He will answer you. Thank you, and God bless. Join me tomorrow for a very special devotion and time of prayer, and I'm excited to just share that with you tomorrow. Thank you, and God bless you all.